This is Hemet.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support this show. Get your ad-free episodes, exclusive bonus episodes, and we always appreciate it. We have so much to talk about.
Big week.
It was a big week because one of the things, the reason we're putting this out on a Friday instead of our usual day is because I was at the Democratic National Convention, got a press pass. I don't know what they were thinking.
I don't either.
They gave me one.
Didn't respect you enough to give you the 2, though.
I did request 2. They said, not a chance.
I could have been in the same space as Oprah. Are you fucking kidding me?
You could have been. So I ended up going there a couple of the days and going to the morning caucus sessions, the nightly stuff you saw on TV as well. I figured I would share a couple of things that I witnessed from my vantage point anyway. One was just the excitement of being there as a political nerd for like 20 years. You know, I've been covering this stuff, watching this stuff forever. And literally, as I make my way downtown, I will not get into traffic saga with you. But once I walked into the building in the morning, before anything's on TV or anything, it's like, oh, I'm walking in. Oh, who's also entering the hotel at this time? It is Stacey Abrams, just walking right past.
Just like she's a regular person?
Like she's a regular human or something.
That's insane.
At the United Center at night when they were doing that, it's like, oh, that's Pramila Jayapal. And I would take a picture and share this with someone like in my family, and they're like, who the hell is that? I'm like, you don't understand because you don't binge watch MSNBC like normal people like me do.
Yes. The bar for normal, truly.
But so it was exciting just to walk through. It's like, oh, this is a congressman I just bumped into randomly and had made small talk with.
Sure, and they're all big fans of ours?
Huge.
I bet.
So that was, as a political nerd, that was exciting.
Yeah.
Also exciting, in the exhibition hall where you would have at any convention, there was a table for the Center for Free Thought Equality, and their whole thing is we want to normalize non-religiosity in politics. We want candidates to openly declare that they are non-religious. We want to help them do it.
Right.
And having that table there, and anecdotally, what I saw and what I heard are some randos walking through, and they're like, oh, what is this? I'm curious. But also, from what I heard, there were candidates or elected officials from state legislatures, a couple of Congress people as well, who were like, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this, because maybe they just openly said, this describes me. It's interesting. Didn't know that, but I'm glad it does. And you should talk about that more. That was cool. That is the sort of thing I'm like, wow, they had to get approval from the DNC to have a table there.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were there weren't that many faith-related groups in that exhibition hall, but that was one of them. It's like, wow, that's awesome that they had that presence there. And they didn't seem to be alienating people. It's not like, as far as I could tell, no one was staying away.
Yeah,
like there was
it's
a
not
black
the 90s anymore.
Right?
People aren't afraid of atheists as much anymore.
Which, damn, we're losing our edge.
I know. I should get those horn implants I've been looking at.
Right? There was also one of the events they had. This is another thing. I don't think I would have seen this in the past. But during the weekdays, before anything was televised, they had their caucus meetings, which is mostly in crowd. Hey, let's talk about, let's talk the youth caucus. We'll talk about youth issues. And maybe they'll have Maxwell Frost, who's the youngest member of Congress, on the panel, and other activists. And that's nice and good, and they'll get a big crowd. There was a women's event, drew a huge crowd. I think Nancy Pelosi was on the panel. That's the sort of thing that they would have. But there was an interfaith panel, and they had a couple of events during the week. And one of them, which was literally organized by Sarah Levin, who organizes as an atheist activist, who works with the interfaith for the Democrat group, that was focused on the threat of Christian nationalism, which, important to talk about. Project 2025 was a big thing that happened there as well. But think about this. They had a panel approved by the DNC to talk about the threat of white Christian nationalism.
Whoa.
They weren't shying away from calling out the problem for what it was.
Good.
That panel had 3 members of Congress on it, 2 of whom were Jamie Raskin and Jared Huffman. Jared Huffman being the only humanist in Congress, openly humanist in Congress. Raskin is super famous as a member of Congress, impeachment leader against Donald Trump, humanist and secular Jewish. And you had Emmanuel Cleaver, who is a devout preacher-like congressman who's not part of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus, but who also knows the threat of Christian nationalism.
Right.
So you have those people. You have academics on the panel. Catherine Stewart, the fabulous author, is the moderator. And I'm just sitting in the back watching all this, thinking, I don't think they would have done anything like this 4 years ago. I mean, nothing happened 4 years ago. It was COVID. 8 years ago, because they would have been scared at the thought that this would be deemed too anti-Christian.
Yeah.
So that was exciting, just to hear that conversation. It's not like they said anything we haven't talked about a million times before, but it's like, you're not afraid to call out this specific brand of Christianity.
Right.
And if anyone listens to any of this, you would never get the impression it's anti-white, anti-Christian, or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
So they figured out how to do it in a safe way, in a way that was important. And again, no one else is going to see it, really,
Well,
outside that crowd.
I do think the difference
but
between
they did it anyway.
Yeah, I think the difference between, a decade ago and now is that I don't think people were as overtly weaponizing Christianity as
See,
much
I
as
feel
they
like
are.
they were, but they didn't. If they did, it was like, we're against gay marriage, and we're going to use our faith as a reason for that. They've always done that with abortion for the past several decades. Never has it been
Right.
crystallized in a playbook like it is now, to the point where we can all point to a single enemy. And it's not Christianity, because there's a lot of Christians on our side of all this. It's that they were able to talk about it in a way I've never seen them talk about it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I haven't seen. Because if they talk about gay marriage or something, same-sex marriage years ago, they either were too scared to talk about it because it was too devious for them
Yeah.
to do it, or they would be afraid to say, Christianity's the reason we don't have marriage equality.
Right.
And now they're like, Project 2025 is a white evangelical, white Christian nationalist project, and we shouldn't have one religious sect, one religious label
That's saying
dictate
it's
policy.
the most important and the only real Americans. Yeah, that's not great.
And they're doing it. Like, good for them. They talked about religious liberty and how that doesn't just apply to that one group. And how do you talk about the environment? Because the people who are climate deniers or against environmental laws are usually doing it from a place of faith. And it's okay to say that and call it out and say that's wrong.
There's literally a dude who said, what did he say? It's like, this is a junk planet. Like, God gave us this is a junk planet or something like
I'm
that.
sure
That was
they
like 6 months
did.
ago. Somebody remembers that.
Yeah, so they had that discussion on a different panel. They showed a version of the movie Bad Faith, which talks about Christian nationalism, a documentary. They had another one where they had academics on stage talking about how the demographics of the Democratic Party and the American electorate is getting more non-religious.
Was my Uncle Warren Throckmorton there?
He was not.
Damn it.
But they had all of that stuff talking about it, basically making a case for any Democrats. Hey, you don't have to just appeal to Christianity.
Right.
You don't have to just assume Christianity is the language we all speak.
Right.
Because look, we have the numbers that say your voters are all over the place, and a lot of them are non-religious.
Yeah.
So stop equating faith as a virtue. Ironically, during that first panel, the Christian nationalism panel, Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago was making the rounds, I guess, and just showed up. And so they're like, well, all right. Well, I guess we'll give you the microphone to say some words
Oh, God.
to this thing, which I think they would have done for any high-ranking person.
Sure.
And I think he just gets there and basically talks about his faith. It's like, buddy, you missed the assignment.
yeah.
Not what we're here for.
Not
but
on brief.
I don't think he knew what the panel was about. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, you know what? In that room, that came across not great.
Yeah.
Because you don't get what we're trying to do here. And whatever, that's not his fault. He didn't know he just wanted to talk.
Yeah.
So fine, that's what a mayor does. But again, the fact that didn't go over as great as you think it did. And all of us are about to talk about it.
Yeah. Yep. Now it's a conversation that we're going to have.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I was excited by that. Other stories I haven't been able to share. So Thursday night, the last night at the convention when Kamala Harris accepts the nomination, I knew, okay, this place is going to be packed. There's a limited area for where press can sit. And so I got there relatively early. And now I'm thinking, okay, at some point here, I'm by myself. I don't know anyone else around me. I can try to make friends, but like, I don't
You
want to talk
won't
to
do that.
humans. Yeah. At some point, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. At some point, I'm going to want to get food, but that means I have to get up. And if I get up, I might either lose my seat, and I'm like, I got to make a friend.
Yeah.
Because someone's got to watch my shit if I need to leave.
Find another brown friend.
I was trying. There weren't that many around me. But okay, so I start, someone sits next to me and she's working on her computer. So I'm like, okay, new friend, here we go. Start talking, find out she's, I'm not going to give away too much. I'm not trying to identify this person, but she's working for...
She's your new co-host. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Working for some outlet I do not know anything about. Fine, whatever. Pleasant small talk conversation, all well and good, to the point where we're sharing plugs and everything.
Aww.
Right. So I'm like, you know what? I'm good. If I
It's
need
a modern
to,
equivalent of a friendship bracelet.
yes. If I need to walk out, I
Yeah.
think I'm okay.
Yeah.
So all well and good. We trade information about what we write for and all that. We're subscribed to each other's thing. Okay,
Cute.
all well and good.
Synergy.
Did not have time to look at any of this shit because I was in the middle of the convention. So I get home, I look it up, and I
Oh my God.
realize, oh no, it's like a Joe Rogan type.
Oh, no!
Didn't catch any of that during the event, but I'm reading the first thing that comes across from this person's thing, and I'm like, oh no. This actually, I found this out. I didn't read this, but I found this out later in the night where this person mentioned a name of someone else. Like, have you ever heard of this person? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yes, I have. That's not a good person.
Oh, no.
I don't know why you are name dropping this person's. It's like someone saying,
Yeah.
have you heard of this great author today? Her name is J.K. Rowling. And I'm like, yeah, but why do you know the
saying a
name? Can you tell me
lot
more?
about you.
And so that was like, I wonder. And then
That's
at night when I got a
so
chance to look, I'm
funny.
like, oh no. So that was fun.
That's outstanding.
So we're besties.
and
But
she's
very
subscribed
temporarily.
to
She's about to
this.
find out some
Hey,
very
girls,
bad stuff in her view.
Sorry about this.
I know.
Thanks for being friends with Evan.
Right?
But,
So that's what happens when I have no friends and I
Yeah.
try to make friends with the first human I see.
Truly, this is not
Backfired and I will
boding well.
never make another friend again.
This is not boding well for Evan's future.
The other thing worth mentioning, during the primetime events, yes, some of the speeches are on TV and you could see them and they got a lot of play on YouTube. One of the things that was also part of the nightly events is that it opened with an invocation, closed with the benediction, which is tradition. Of course, you're going to have representatives.
What's a benediction?
It's a closing prayer.
Oh.
And so they didn't just have Christians. They had a Muslim speaker or a Jewish speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And all right, fine. But they're all Abrahamic religions. Didn't have any non-theistic people on there.
Yeah.
And I know that literally no one was paying attention. Not even in the room anyone was paying attention.
Right.
But I was thinking about that because one of the things that went viral this week was the fact that they did a roll call of all the states, and you have to officially tell us how many delegates are pledged to Kamala Harris. And normally, even if you go 8 years ago, it was, yes, we're from the state of Illinois, where we're the Lincoln state.
Land of Lincoln?
The land of Lincoln and the Prairie State, and we have 47 delegates to this. Okay. Yeah,
They do a little spiel about their
little
state.
spiel, then they announce the number.
pretty cute.
And in 2020, during COVID, I remember this because it stood out during that year's convention. Couldn't get together in person. So Democrats put together a video of like rando people, like, here's the Maine clip, like Maine, the state of Maine. They had like, we're two fishermen. Here's a crab. We're the crab state. And we give our 47 delegates to Joe Biden. It's like, it's cheesy, but it's kind of adorable because you're all trying to film this on your phones and they smushed it all together in one video and it kind of shows the cute little flavor of every state when it was done well.
Yeah.
And that stood out at the time. It's like, who's watching the convention during COVID? Well, nerdy people like us. And it's like, oh yeah, that was actually kind of clever the way they
cute.
did that. It
Yeah.
wasn't boring.
Yeah.
So this year they had a DJ. Every state got their own song. And when the one that went super viral, if you haven't seen this, you will.
Haven't.
Was when you get to Georgia, and they're going in mostly alphabetical order. They get to Georgia,
Why
and it's
mostly?
like, what? Because California, where Kamala Harris is from, they skip because you get to do we save the best for last. You know what I mean?
I see.
Stuff like that. So they get to Georgia. It's like, all right, what song are you going to do for Georgia? We're all,
Georgia on my mind.
Maybe.
Last train in
maybe
Georgia.
they're doing
Midnight
that.
train in Georgia.
And all of a
That's what it's
sudden,
called.
like, the thing shifts, and Little John is in the audience doing, like, Turn Down for What? Like, literally singing in the crowd. I thought to myself, when that segment started, looking at the schedule, I'm like, there's a 2-hour block where they're going to do the roll call.
a
I
long
can
time.
go to the bathroom and get dinner then, and I will return for the evening. Then they started it. It's like, oh, shit, the DJ's actually kind of fun. He's having a blast up there. And all the songs are fun. And, of course, the little corny spiels are amusing.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't leave for any of this.
Oh my
And
God,
literally,
good
we
for
have
them.
concerts going on in the floor because Little John's walking around. It's hilarious.
That's amazing.
It was great. But I'm like, you know what? And there were videos also of what the Republicans did like a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally lady on stage saying, Iowa, Iowa, 47. Okay. They're never going to go back. Neither convention's going to go back to doing it the old way again because they changed it. Imagine
Now it's
when
gonna
we
get
talk about
so over the top.
benedictions and invocations. Imagine if you just said, we're going to open our convention with a 1 minute TED Talk. Here's wisdom from this local high schooler,
sure.
from an activist, from whatever. You could do really interesting things that do not involve a prayer no one is listening to. Of all
You're
the
saying
things,
they have an off-road.
They have an off-road.
Easily get away
They
from.
have so many ways they were creative and interesting at this convention that they're getting praise for.
Yeah.
And yet this thing they put no thought into whatsoever. It's like you don't need the opening prayer that no
Right.
one's listening to that you think you need to have.
Yeah.
But like honestly,
is anybody actually going to be mad if you guys drop that?
Right.
Like, is
They
anyone
could-
going to notice?
anyway, I'm so happy I got to witness it live. It's
Yeah.
my equivalent of going to a Taylor Swift concert of just, I don't care if I'm in the nosebleed seats.
Yeah.
I want to be here. I
Yeah.
want to see the
in the room.
vibe. And it was cool being around. I mean, you're watching on the floor. People are cheering and standing up for stuff. And in the media section, people are actually, other people are doing work. And so I'm just sitting there. It's like, oh yeah, we're the ones not cheering. We're just
Yeah.
on our computers or phones or whatever.
But it was
Cool to watch.
like a cool
And
vibe.
on the last night, I sat at the side of the room near the back. So literally the podium where they're speaking I'm behind it.
Oh, God.
On purpose. I chose that because one, you get access to see the teleprompter, which is interesting. But also it's a different view that I wouldn't get if I was just in the audience or watching on TV. But one of the vantage points from my vantage point, you could see the door from which speakers were appearing. And so
okay.
there was a rumor that began Thursday early, like there's going to be a special guest here. And it's like, maybe Taylor Swift.
Maybe
Beyonce.
Beyonce.
And so this became a little guessing game among my new bestie. And the few people around us were like, wait, who might it be? And then you're seeing can we see through that door? Oh, they just put a curtain behind the door, which they haven't done all week. And like, maybe they're hiding somebody. It was the saddest anticlimactic thing at the very end where
Who was it?
literally they had the video of Kamala Harris and it's like, well, now would be the time if you have a special guest. And they're
Yeah.
like, and now entering the stage, Kamala Harris. We're like, no, I don't want to see her right now.
We
Just
know
give me
she's going to be here. Where's Beyonce? No Beyonce?
No Beyonce.
No Taylor Swift?
No Tay-Tay.
So what was the special guest?
The friends we made along the way. There was Kamala Harris, I guess, was the special guest if you want to back up a month, but it was very TMZ. We're reading TMZ on our phones, and TMZ's like, Beyonce's performing tonight. We know this. It's like, well, you get everything right somehow.
Yeah.
And they were literally wrong about this one thing.
That's amazing.
It was
And so
fun.
there was no special fancy. That's
No special
fine.
fancy, just me and my new MAGA friend.
Yeah, cool. I'm glad you guys found each other.
Thank you.
Found love in a hopeless place. Did you know I waited on Little John when I was in my 20s? I worked at a Max and Irma's in Burr Ridge, which is like...
Why is Little John...
I mean, my guess is that he was performing in the city and maybe
Okay.
staying at, or like on his way out of town or whatever, because it's right off I-55. And anyway, it was just like these like 4 really well-dressed black guys in their 30s. And I was like, well, this isn't the usual Burr Ridge fare that I'm used to doing with like white dudes in polos. Anyway, I waited on them. They were perfectly fine. And then they left, and the dude was like, do you know who that was? And I was like, obviously I don't, sir. And, it was
And then you pointed to yourself.
yeah, I was like, can you
Yes.
look at me? I'm wearing
Oh my
like
God.
drama
When
masks
we are,
on my necklace.
When we are done with this, go look up that clip. I showed it to my kids because I'm like, I
Wait,
got
which clip?
this.
Oh, the Little
Georgia
John?
Little John clip. I showed it to my kids that night, and now my 7-year-old won't stop saying "turn down for what," which I have failed as a parent.
That's pretty funny, though.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, it was super fun because
Oh, cool.
even though that one went viral, every other state's like, what are you going to play for this? Like Wyoming. What are you going to do for Wyoming?
I got
And
spurs
I'm
that
telling you,
jingle, jingle, jingle.
all of it. The whole thing. It's the corniest part of the entire week. And it's the
being
one.
corny is the best.
And it's the only thing they actually have to do at the convention, really. And so you know what's
Yeah.
going to happen. And it was cool to watch. Again, policy, political nerd. It was glorious.
Yeah, I
was
love
cool.
that for you. Very fun.
Shall we move on to actual stories?
I think so. I got to tell my little John story, all right?
We have a story about Ryan Walters again.
Yay!
This one's very interesting, though. Nope. I didn't even say it. Thank you. Lahoma, he's the superintendent of public instruction, and he's the guy we've talked about because he's trying to push the Bible in the curriculum. Every teacher must use the Bible in their classroom.
I have thought and talked about this gentleman more in the last month than I think is like I've talked to not strangers, but like my coworkers. I'm like, have you heard of this guy Ryan Walters? Here's what he's doing in Oklahoma because he's just such a little loon. He
is. He's the one who backed a taxpayer-funded Catholic charter school that the Oklahoma Supreme Court said, nah, you can't do that. He's trying to put Christian chaplains in public schools, get the 10 Commandments in public schools. Okay, that's Ryan Walters. He also, there's a whole list of crazy shit he's done.
Is he the one, or is that Louisiana, who someone's like, you can't make us do this? And he's like, oh, yes, I can.
That is Ryan Walters in Oklahoma, where he says you got to use the Bible in every class.
Ding-dong.
And every superintendent's like, well, we're starting school, and we're not because you're insane.
Yeah, like also you can't like drop a new curriculum in the 3 days before school starts, Ryan.
Yes. So here's what's interesting. For all the conversations we've had about it, recently, more than 24 Republican state lawmakers in the Oklahoma House sent a letter to the Speaker of the House in Oklahoma saying, you need to investigate this guy. Not because of all the shit we talk about.
Boy.
Not because of all the shit we talk about.
There's more?
They're fine with all that stuff, apparently. But they actually sent a letter saying he's doing some bad shit and we need to investigate him as a house. And the only person who can allow us to do an investigation really is you, the Speaker of the House.
Okay.
So let us do an investigation. And the letter is wild. Let me tell you what they are accusing.
So there's more to it than the stuff we talk about.
Yes. So here they listed, this is from State Representative Mark McBride, who's the chair of the House Subcommittee on Education. So a guy who's literally invested in what Ryan Walters does as the state superintendent of education. So he's the chair of the lawmaking committee that deals with education. He said, I have 6 concerns in his letter.
6?
And then he highlights them. Because he's not talking about culture war. He's not talking about political, like what Ryan Walters is doing with all this other stuff. He's saying, no, here are my 6. 1, I'm going to tell you these because they're insane. Walters is not allowing members of my committee, the Education Committee, or the Senate equivalent, to watch their executive sessions of the Board of Education. Ryan Walters chairs like the Board of Education for the state.
And
sometimes some of it's public, but then they can go into executive session where the public doesn't get to see stuff. But the House Education Committee should be allowed to see that stuff, and Ryan Walters has blocked them from watching his private conversations with the other members of the board. And
that's not
according to McBride here, he's saying that violates state law. It's happened more than once.
Okay, so and that's number 1.
That's number 1.
Of 6.
Okay, number 2. When they asked him, like when they made inquiries, hey, we're the Committee on Education, we have some questions about what you're doing, you kind of have to respond to them. That's literally your job to respond.
I'm learning that he doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah, he either refused to answer the questions or answered only with, quote, significant delays to the point where the legislature, the committees on education had to issue subpoenas to force him to respond to them in a timely manner.
Whoa.
So, like, you know how sometimes members of Congress, they put out press releases saying, we've written a letter to the chair of this committee to give us this information. That's not just a press release. They're the only ones that can compel people to speak.
Right.
And so if you're not responding to them, like, what are you doing? Those are the people. You don't have to respond to the constituents. We're nobodies. But you got to respond to the politicians. That's their job, to get you to answer stuff in their areas. And Ryan Walters is not doing that.
Do you have any sense to why he's being
that's
so
number
secretive?
3.
Oh, great.
Number 3, he's not following orders, apparently, regarding how public money can be spent when it comes to the matter of school security. Here's what I mean by that. There was a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, I think a couple years ago now. Oklahoma lawmakers, in response to that shooting, the mass shooting, they passed a bill saying we will give public schools $150 million for security enhancements.
Wow.
They're not banning guns, but they're like, we'll give you better doors. I don't know. But it amounted to roughly, I'm going to say $96,000 a year for 3 years for every public school district in the state.
Okay.
You'll get about $300,000 over 3 years, every public school district. And the way the law was written and the way everyone understood it is that if you don't use the money in year 1, you can now it'll roll over to year 2.
Okay.
And some districts said, there are some upgrades we could make, but it's going to cost $300,000. So you know what? We're not going to spend it until year 3, until all the checks have come in, and then we'll spend it.
Which makes sense.
That makes sense. And that's how they all understood the law. But then when it came down to year 2 or year 3, they discovered Ryan Walters is not giving us access to the money from previous years that we thought should have been rolled over into years 2 and 3.
Okay.
And why isn't Ryan Walters giving us the money that the
is
lawmakers
our
lawmakers have already appropriated it to us?
Okay.
Why isn't he giving it to us?
Why?
So the House committee said, "Hey, why aren't you giving them the money?" And now they're not getting a response back to number 2.
Holy
And they need
shit.
answers because, hey, school's starting again. And he's not responding or it's seriously delayed.
Can you imagine working in a school district in Oklahoma right now?
Yeah. Right? Horrible. That's
what a
number 3.
nightmare.
So he's not doing what the law required him to do,
Right.
according to the House Education Chair.
This is very much you have one job.
Yeah. Number 4, he refused to hand over information about how he's spending taxpayer dollars for his office's travel budget.
Oh, boy.
So McBride says, we learned about where he was spending money because reporters investigated it and not because members of the legislature said, hey, give us this stuff so we can investigate you.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have access to all that. Reporters using freedom of information requests managed to get that information. Why are we hearing about your travel things from them when you're supposed to be delivering that information to us?
Do you have to do a lot of traveling as somebody who's running an Oklahoma state school?
You have to know. So a lot of the places they're going might be right-wing conferences, but you could make the argument that we're selling Oklahoma's school system to other states. I'm not even going to get into whether or not that's a good use of money or not.
Okay.
But according to one local news station, they said when he finally handed over his travel budget to state officials, they said there were discrepancies between what we found and what he delivered to the legislature.
Oh my God, this guy's a fucking
That's number 4.
criminal now.
Yeah.
He's not just an asshole, he's also a criminal.
Yeah. Then, okay, what about open records? This is number 5. What about open records requests?
What about
In
them?
Oklahoma, unless there's a really good reason for a delay, you're supposed to fulfill open record requests within 30 days.
Okay.
So it turns one reporter who we've talked about because he covers education nationally for NBC News, he said he had submitted...
What's his name?
Tyler Kincaid, I believe. But he had submitted an open records request a year ago for a story he was trying to write 10 months ago. And he informed the Attorney General, it's been 10 months, I haven't received this material, and I have not been given an explanation for why it's delayed, why you need to wait this long.
Right.
So he's not fulfilling open records request in a timely manner, which violates state law.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Attorney General, the Gentner Drummond, the guy who's good at church-state separation despite being a Republican, he's threatened Walters with civil and criminal action over this.
Whoa!
So he's saying, yeah, do your damn job. That's number 5.
So this is escalating. This isn't just people wringing their hands. This is, okay.
And here's the final, number 6 on the list. In 2023, the Oklahoma State Legislature, they actually found a bipartisan thing. The 99 Republicans in the Oklahoma legislature and the 3 Democrats, they passed a bipartisan bill saying, let's make sure all public schools have emergency albuterol inhalers for students with asthma and something called a spacer so that one inhaler can be used by multiple kids. So equipment and an accessory that helps with the equipment. It cost totally, I think, $250,000 for the state. It wasn't that much for the state. Walter's office never spent that money. The schools never got the inhalers.
Seriously?
Yeah. Even though he was legally obligated to spend it because the money was appropriated for this purpose, he never spent it. And then when lawmakers try to ask what the hell is going on, by the way, school starting, we need to know because this could put kids' lives in danger.
Oh my God.
They got no response from Walter's office.
I mean...
So,
he's literally putting children in danger.
yeah.
And we have no idea where this money has gone?
It's not that it's going into his pocket. It's that you're not spending it on the thing we told you to spend it on. And I think he can, maybe, I'll get into more in a second, but maybe he's making the argument, well, I need to make sure it's a good use of money because it's my office and I don't want to waste money on stuff I don't deem important.
But that would require him to like do work and not just
do work. But
dodge
also
phone calls.
not your job. Your job, I mean, the legislature passed the bill. Governor signed the bill into law.
Yeah.
You don't get a choice about this. No one cares what you think. Your job is to spend the money on this thing. And you don't get to like give oversight on this. So their concerns, legitimate. They are different from the culture war battles. And like his Christian nationalism, Ryan Walters, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's running his office like a dictatorship, not as a facilitator of lawmakers' wishes. Now, again, 24 Republicans are like, we are calling for your head. Yeah. So McBride, the guy leading the charge on this, wrote to the Speaker of the House, it saddens me that I must make such a request of you to launch this investigation. However, I believe that all other remedies have been exhausted.
Wow.
I hear daily from constituents from my district and taxpayers from across the state pleading for this body, the House, to take action and hold the superintendent and the State Board of Education accountable for their rogue behavior. Wow. These pleas have fallen on deaf ears, and the superintendent has chosen to pursue an aggressively opposite path, one filled with name-calling, obstruction, defiance, and secrecy. Mind you, every single one of these people is going to vote for Donald Trump.
Of course.
But they're like, he's doing it to us, though.
We hate this.
Right. So,
wow.
That's their letter.
Oh, my God, these people.
Yeah. Again, 24 Republicans in Oklahoma said, yeah, we want this investigation. We don't like what this guy is doing. It's reminiscent of Texas Republicans who said, we want to investigate the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, because this guy is corrupt as hell, and they just didn't have enough numbers to like override any stonewalling. But here's the thing. The Speaker of the House, McCall here, the Speaker of the House says, I'm not going to do anything with this letter unless you get 51 House Republicans to sign off on it, which is 2/3 of their caucus. He says, we have 75 of us here. You need 51 Republicans to tell me to do this, and then I will. But not until then. Right now, there are 25 names on the letter.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, okay, genuinely, to what end? Like, what is happening here?
Trying to get other Republicans in Oklahoma is like asking MAGA cultists, will you investigate Donald Trump? Like, it doesn't matter if a couple of them do it because they won't have the numbers. It won't matter what the allegations are because they're always going to refuse to do it.
So he's the superintendent of schools?
Ryan Walters is the superintendent of public instruction.
Okay, and then who does he answer to? The governor?
He answers to none of your goddamn business.
Okay, but like
the governor,
if this were a real world,
the state house in Oklahoma could investigate him. He would be obligated to respond to them. That's why these members of the House are saying, hey, chair, let's do an investigation of this guy because there's a lot. And what happens if you investigate him? Because this is just the tip of the iceberg. What else is he hiding? Because this is only the stuff we know about. An investigation could discover more. So how did Ryan Walters respond to all this?
He fled the country.
He says in a news release, in a press conference, basically, last week, he said, I am calling on Speaker McCall and Mark McBride, the Republican who wrote the letter, to begin their impeachment proceedings Monday. Basically saying, yeah, go do it. I dare you. Get to work. Go try to impeach me. He says, it is time for Oklahomans to have the answers. He's daring them to do the investigation and vote him out. Why? In my opinion, he's saying, bring it on, because you're not going to get the votes you need to get rid of me.
I mean, to me, it feels because months ago you were saying that he's basically doing a long form audition for
Trump's Secretary of Education.
And I wonder if he's just peacocking for Trump.
Yes. Now, he also said the Speaker. Walters is now going after the Speaker of the House, the guy who's blocking the investigation from taking place. Walters says the Speaker wants to impeach me for political advantage in the 2026 governor's race. So let's start the
Yeah,
impeachment
we're all really
proceedings.
worried about 2026 right now, my dude.
And
Yeah,
again,
that's what everybody's thinking
The Speaker
about.
of the House is the guy saying, "Oh, you have 25 names on your list. Get me 51, or I'm not doing anything."
Oh, it's the speaker who wanted the 50
Walters
names.
is
I
going
got you. I
after
thought
the
it was Walters.
Speaker of the House. He's the ally.
To
but
what
he's like,
end?
"Oh, yeah, I know McBride. This guy wants to investigate me. But you know who else is bad? The Speaker." Like, hey, Speaker, I dare you. You're a MAGA guy. I dare you to come after me. Now, if there's one little silver lining here, it's that there is a way they can do an investigation that is independent of like the House investigation. It's through the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency. And they announced this week, all right, we are going to do that investigation because we don't need an okay from anybody. So they will do something.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen. We don't know where it'll lead, but interesting. So here's where we're at.
It's madness.
That Fiscal Transparency Group, they're doing an investigation into Walters now. That is happening. Attorney General Drummond said, hey, Walters, release all the money for security updates for the schools.
Yeah.
And then he said, quote, I pray that your failure to deploy these funds does not result in deadly consequences.
Holy shit.
Then
They are not mincing words.
Then Walters
Oh, God.
put out a statement saying, this is on August 13th.
This needs
after
to be a
the letter
reality
was
show.
sent.
This should not be government work.
The day after that letter was sent
Yeah.
to the House Speaker, he put out a tweet that said, ending porn in schools,
Oh, finally.
driving woke indoctrination out of the classroom, demanding accountability. The left and union lackeys call for an investigation and impeachment. I will never stop standing for parents.
So.
First of all, those first three sentences had nothing to do with the
No, he
last
was
two.
just saying buzzwords.
Yes. And also, who's coming after him? 25
Republicans. Who
and he
aren't
said,
Christian enough?
He said, the left and union lackey, it's 25 Republicans, buddy, in MAGA country.
Union lackeys.
Uh-huh.
Like, is he just going after teachers and
Buzzwords. More buzzwords. Everyone coming after a MAGA person must
To
be
what
to the left of
end?
AOC and Bernie, even when they are Republicans.
Oh my God.
Right.
In Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Maya Rudolph is Dionne Warwick, and at one point she just goes, to what end? To what end? And my friend Leslie and I, anytime somebody does something stupid, we just go, to what end?
Nice.
Because it's just, because what else, like, to what end? To what end, sir? Like, what do you think is
By the
going to
way,
happen?
separately from all
Does he
of
think this money's never going to go to the school? Is that his goal for the money not to go to the school? Like,
the
to
little-
what end, sir?
The little bit they have said is that we just wanted to make sure this money was being used properly because that's our job.
No,
And-
it's not. Your job is to rubber stamp
Or
paperwork,
in the,
my dude.
in the case of the security, which, by the way, I believe they have now released the money for the security.
Oh, good.
They said, well, we weren't really sure if the law was worded in a way that allowed that money to be rolled over year after year. So, we just had to do some homework and make sure it was legal for us to release the money, basically coming up with any excuse for their stonewalling because they got caught on this one.
Okay, I am confused. What, like, I know I keep saying to what end, but like, why?
I think he'll.
To what
he
end,
thinks, I
Hammond?
think he thinks he'll come across
To
better.
what end?
I think he'll come across better to voters if he says, "Well, the legislature had like millions of dollars going to security, $150 million to security. We made sure it didn't go out unless we approved of what it was doing, so we saved taxpayers money."
You're describing micromanaging, sir.
I think that's what he's trying to do. And it doesn't matter. But his whole thing is, yeah, they did this, but guess what? I stepped in and you fill in the blank with whatever makes him look like a hero.
So Ryan Walters goes home at the end of his day and he sits down to dinner with his wife and 2.6 children.
Yes.
And he says to them, I'm doing really good things here.
Yes.
Like,
Donald
what-
Trump loves me.
Like that, can you just imagine? He's just like, cool. I made sure schools
He-
didn't get money. Great.
He looks
Good
at
on
the blow
me.
up doll and says, "You love me, right?" And it says, "Yes."
It just, I love to think about these people's home life of just like, oh, honey, what did you do at school today?
That was another good thing about the DNC, which is watching Tim Walz's family act normal
Oh
and
my God,
crying
his
when he's
sweet little
speaking.
boy.
Yes. It's like,
so wonderful.
You know who doesn't do any of that sort of reaction stuff? Anyone named Trump. No emotion at any time about anything. They just look like they're always constipated.
Did you see apparently somebody text Melania on January 6th?
Oh, yeah. She spoke at the convention and said, hey, do some shit. Like, talk to your husband. You could stop this. And then they showed the text on screen.
It's fucked.
And then Melania responded. No.
I can. So was that person who was...
That was Stephanie Grisham, I believe, who
and
was...
so she was a former...
She worked in the Trump administration with Melania.
Wow.
Yep. And she was a speaker at the DNC. And they did this all week long where they're like, we're not saying these people are Democrats. There's someone joked, like, that must have set a record for the number of Republicans speaking at the DNC.
Yeah, what a good point.
Some people said, yeah, Beyonce Taylor was a special guest. They might have George W. Bush come out and say, I'm voting. I mean, would have gotten booed, but like, for a minute.
Well, then he can go hang out with Ellen and they can
right.
hate people together.
By the way, I'm not even done. With Oklahoma's public education system, because coincidentally, the U.S. Department of Education, not run under Betsy DeVos, put out their report, because they actually do work here.
Oh.
They put out a report for every state saying, hey, on the stuff we give you federal money for, we want to make sure that money is being spent properly. So we looked into, like, of all the categories that we give you money for, how is it being done? 1-star means something requires urgent attention. 4-star means you met requirements with commendation, like you're doing a good job.
Okay.
So 1 to 4 stars on all these various things. Oklahoma's report from the U.S. Department of Education, they received, out of 52 categories that were measured, they received a 1-star rating in 32 of the 52 categories. And 2 stars in 7 others.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, for example, one example is that the government said Oklahoma's not providing proper records regarding funding for low-income schools and COVID-era funds.
Oh, good.
Like, we want to know, we gave you money during COVID. Did you spend it the way you're supposed to spend it?
Well, I mean,
and
I should hope so.
The records are not appropriate.
But he's so diligent about making sure every dime his state spends. So obviously he's kept detailed records that he's happy to share.
His office responded to that, and they said, the now dated report from the U.S. Department of Education, yada, 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 this all happened under our predecessor, not us. Blame her, not us.
Wow.
And they said, our team has moved swiftly to address these findings, has already resolved many of them, and all will be resolved by the October deadline. That's what they said. So that's their response to the Department of Education. So anyway, Walters is not just a culture warrior who has no business running public schools, partly because he doesn't want public schools. He wants to eliminate the Department of Education. He's also just really goddamn awful at doing his job. He's a Christian nationalist who just keeps failing upwards because conservative voters, and he knows this, don't give a damn about competence, just what rhetoric you use. That's what we've learned from Trump. He knows it too. And it's to the point where even Republicans are like, you're too much. It's too much.
I mean, it's just... It makes me feel like I'm losing my entire mind. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like they are, like I'm watching a terrible TV show of just the worst and dumbest human beings possible. You know what I mean?
Right. All right. So since we're bashing white Christian nationalism, let's talk something good about Christians too. Just to recap this, in the last 2 presidential elections, roughly 80% of white evangelical voters backed Donald Trump. In 2016 and 2020. That also means, though, almost 20% of them supported Clinton or Biden in those years. Now, if you're Kamala Harris and you could put a dent in that 80%, because you're not going to convince most of them,
right?
And you're not going to convince really any of them to switch over. But if you could put a little dent, what if it went down from like 80% of white evangelicals to like 78%? That would actually be kind of a big deal given their numbers, especially if it's in a swing state. So recently, a group was publicly launched called Evangelicals for Harris. It follows like the white women for Harris, or the dads for Harris, white dads for Harris, whatever. The group had a Zoom call recently where a whole bunch of progressive Christians made the case for why there's nothing hypocritical about supporting Democrats in the election.
Yeah, duh.
Very interesting. And by the way, a separate group called Christians for Kamala met earlier. They had about 40,000 people tune in and raised $200,000 for her campaign.
Well, they had that alliteration thing going, so I get why they did better.
Right? And like, here's the thing. It's not that making a case for Harris as a Christian is hard to do. I mean, Harris is Christian. She's Baptist. Tim Walz is Lutheran. They're pushing for policies that help Americans who are struggling. You would think you could make a Christian argument for that.
Like Jesus did.
You could. Even their support of like climate change policies can be framed as we got to protect the home God gave us. So like, what could be more Jesus-like than that? But, of course, we know this. Trump hasn't just taken the Christian vote for granted all these times. He's leaned into the worst stereotypes of evangelicals to argue they have no other choice because he can get away with anything.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, like, they have to vote for me. I'm the guy with the Bible, basically. And no amount of hypocrisy is changing them. And again, he's right about that because even in 2016, I expected them to vote for him. But in 2020, he really didn't lose any of them. Which tells you a lot about that. Yeah. So here's the thing. And we've said this before, if Donald Trump worships anybody, it's himself. They said that at the convention too. But this is interesting. The first ad put out by Evangelicals for Harris, and I don't know if it's just digital only or they're doing it in swing states, but the first one featured a long clip of Billy Graham, the older guy, the dead guy.
Yeah.
Reverend Billy Graham saying, being a Christian means needing to ask God for forgiveness. Followed by a clip of Trump saying he never does that. And then they're like, like,
so they're just mixing
and matching clips. Guys. It's one of our guys, evangelical dude, right?
Wow.
Versus Trump, who's like, I don't do any of that. Which means if that's the first ad, there's so many more to come. Because if you want to highlight his hypocrisy.
Easy to do.
Easy.
Wow.
By making this argument, though, here's the thing. How effective is it? You could ask this about any digital thing, any viral thing. Like, all right, that's a cute ad.
Yeah.
But it's like, what's the project? The one that highlights all the Republican hypocrisy. Shit. I'll remember it in a second after I stop talking about it. But there is an argument to be made that, okay, these ads might go viral, but who cares? No one's changing their mind because of it. The Lincoln Project, that's what it is. But like Evangelicals for Harris, it gives white evangelicals permission to do what I think a lot of them know is the right moral thing to do, which is at least not vote for Trump, but maybe vote for a Democrat. Because, again, their whole argument is you don't have to like all of her policies. We don't, which, by the way, that applies to every Democrat everywhere. But you can do it. We're doing it. I mean, that's the power of this group, saying, yeah, we're Christian. We're evangelicals. Our lives are spent in the church. And we're saying it's totally fine to vote for Harris because Trump is really awful.
Yeah.
And not just anti-Trump, but like you can make a Christian argument for Harris.
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard to make a Christian argument for Harris because she's a fucking Christian.
Right.
And Trump ain't.
Yes. And one of the speakers at Evangelicals for Harris's Zoom call was a woman named Jerusha Duford, who happens to be Billy Graham's granddaughter, who she said during the Zoom call, I'm quoting here, I was thinking this morning that if you told me 10 years ago that I would be taking an active role in politics, I would have laughed. But then I had to stop and realize this is so much more than politics. She went on. In 2016, when a man bragged about assaulting women, various leaders of my faith then propped up this man as a poster boy for godly manhood and leadership.
Wow.
This broke my heart as I have watched, quite frankly, for the last 8 years, people who were curious about Jesus and his teachings have done a 180 and walked in the other direction from my faith. And to be fair, she said this in 2020 as well. So she's been speaking out against Trump for a while now.
Good for
but
her.
like, yes, good, fine. Evangelicals have been fed this steady diet of Trump propaganda for years. They've been told in no uncertain terms they cannot be faithful Christians and vote for Democrats. They are told that the Republican Party, no matter what horrible shit they do, is anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ and good
all
on
that
their other
matters.
issues, and that's all that matters. And it doesn't matter to them that those policies have led to more suffering. And
No.
ironically,
Why would that matter?
More abortions, if some reports are to be believed, after Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
So good on them. I mean, here's the thing. It's got to be tough for Evangelicals for Harris because on LGBTQ issues, they're actually not far apart. Most of them think homosexuality is a sin.
Right.
Most of them think trans people do not exist. What sets this group apart is that they're just not going to be single issue voters on any of that stuff. They're basically saying,
Sure.
you may disagree on a lot of issues with Kamala Harris, but, and then they fill in the blanks as they want to.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. And if you want to read a fun Twitter account, theirs is really fun. It's Evangels for the number 4 Harris, but they've been responding to people. Evangels for Harris. And one person wrote to them, this has to be a parody account, to which they responded, brother, you have to ask yourself, if you see a Christian account that prioritizes kindness and Christ's love and think of it as parody, maybe the discomfort might be inward.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's very good.
Franklin Graham, the son of Billy Graham, who's mega-pilled,
Yep.
he responded to all this by saying, the liberals are using anything and everything they can to promote candidate Harris. They even developed a political ad trying to use my father, Billy Graham's image. And how dare anyone else use his father's
They
name?
tried to? It seems like they're very
He went on to say, they are trying to mislead people. Maybe they don't know that my father appreciated the conservative values and policies of President Donald Trump in 2016.
Wait, when did Billy Graham die?
Like a minute after 2016. And if he were alive today, my father's views and opinions would not have changed, which I know he means in a good way, but also
that's not
if your views haven't
not a
changed since
brag.
2016, yeah, maybe that's a you thing.
Oh boy, these people. These fucking people.
By the way, in 2011, toward the end of his life, when we knew he was not going to last that much longer, Billy Graham did an interview with Christianity Today, and they asked him, do you have any regrets in your life? You know what he said? Quote, I also would have steered clear of politics.
Wow.
I guess we're just memory holing that one.
Damn.
So, liberals didn't create the ad. The ad was not misleading, as Franklin Graham said. And while no one should equate Billy Graham with morality,
Yeah.
he does deserve some credit for rejecting an alliance between like religious fundamentalists and political conservatives in 1981 when he was not old. Here's what he said in a magazine profile about him. Quote, I don't want to see religious bigotry in any form. Liberals organized in the 60s and conservatives certainly have a right to organize in the 80s. But it would disturb me if there was a wedding between the religious fundamentalists and the political right. The hard right has no interest in religion except to manipulate it.
Holy shit.
And then he's like, manipulate me. Like, spent the next 20 years of his life being manipulated, in his words.
That's too bad.
So, again, other reactions. It's been fun to watch evangelicals, the white Christian nationalists, flip out
Oh, yeah.
over
What are they
evangelicals
saying?
for Harris. They said one Southern Baptist seminary professor said the evangelicals for Harris message was a, quote, betrayal of the gospel.
Oh, which
One
part?
pastor, all of it.
Oh.
One pastor said the group represents, quote, godless globalism. I don't know what that means. Another equated the group.
It feels like it means Jewish, but I don't know.
Yes.
Like
I mean,
it
I think
feels that way. I don't know why.
Wait. Another equated the group to the hypothetical Jews for Hitler.
Okay. Wow, that took my breath away. Oh my God. Who said this?
Some pastor.
Jews
Sean
for Hitler.
Foyt, the conspiracy theorist who plays a guitar and goes around spreading COVID, he claimed the group shows, quote, just how apostate much of the American church has become.
Is apostate an adjective?
He's using it as a thing.
Nah.
Yeah, as a noun.
Become
And then
apostate?
Yeah, no, I read it correctly.
Okay.
And then another right-wing leader flat out called them, quote, Nazi regime theologians.
Now, when they say that, what do you think they mean?
They just want to put the word Nazi in front of it.
Genuinely, like when they say things like that, what are they equating liberals to Nazi? Because like when I equate,
I mean,
say
is that a
Trump-
compliment? It could be from some of these people.
That's fair. I mean, just like when I
like Nazi regime theologians? That sounds like my people.
I just don't.
Maybe they meant it as a compliment. Maybe I should not have included that in the list.
Yeah.
Now, again, I want to stress, Evangelicals for Harris might be anti-Trump more than pro-Harris, as if there's a huge difference there. But the group can be both. That is a criticism I've heard.
I do want to say that I think maybe the least intellectually honest thing that I've heard a lot of people on the left say is that your whole platform is just, it's not Trump.
It's anti-Trump.
It's anti-Trump. And people say that as if it's
okay.
bad
You can play defense too. But I will say with Harris, the one reason, quote, like the vibes were good at the convention and has been for the past month is because for so many of us who are used to being anti-Trump, we actually might have some policies, not all of them, but you are going to have a lot of stuff you can actually be for. And that's what they were stressing from the stage. Tim Wall's really good at that.
Yeah.
Talking about, look at what we can do when we have power. We can make people's lives better in the following ways. And again, it's not going to happen across the board on every issue people care about.
No.
But again, that's the other reason people are excited in a way I haven't seen since 2008.
Well, and also as if throwing your effort into preventing Trump from becoming president isn't a
noble cause.
Noble
like,
cause.
Yeah,
like,
no.
Like
that's fine.
That's the thing that really makes me, it's like, oh, you're just anti-Trump. Yeah, dog, I'm anti-Trump because he's a monster.
Yep.
And he's only getting worse. And he's only getting more like not lucid. I'll tell you that right
and
now.
Again, even if they don't want to call themselves pro-Harris, if you think that treating others compassionately and working to help the least of these and bringing civility to the public square and centering your faith around forgiveness instead of hatred, if you think all of that might be what Jesus wanted, there's no discrepancy here. And again, why is this important? If 80% of voters, white evangelical voters, supported Trump in 16 and 20, if you can peel off a tiny segment of those white evangelical voters in the right areas of the country, that makes a difference. And it's going to be a lot easier to find some ambivalent evangelicals in that group, that 80%, than trying to get people off their couches when they don't vote, or to find like the hidden Democrats or trying to switch Republicans. Like, no, go after the big group.
Right.
Trump does this with black people all the time.
Yeah,
He's
always.
like, they're all against me. But since 90% of like black people are for Democrats, if I can just get a small segment of them, that would actually work in my favor. He knows that. So good for the Evangelicals for Harris for trying to get some of their people out of the rabbit hole of Trumpism.
Boy, this is it's getting close, huh?
It's very, very annoying. It's very annoying that they're getting criticism for something that shouldn't be that controversial.
I really have been trying to stay off social media because I really think that like the online left is gonna make me insane of just.
This is accurate.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I've always called it the dirtbag left. I don't know if that's a common term, but it's just people doing really insincere, like, oh, you don't like Kamala, you just hate Trump. And as if them pointing that out makes them smart. Like, no, it's okay. I saw one that's like, it's been 12 days and Kamala Harris has not released any of her like policy, whatever. And it's like, well, she just picked a VP candidate yesterday. So I think she's been busy. It's just all of these like unserious arguments of like, yeah, you really think that Harris is just as bad as Trump because she waited 2 weeks to put out her policy? Like, what the fuck are you? 2020 Republicans didn't even put out policies. They're just like, oh, Trump. Like, I'm so fucking sick of the dirtbag left who only exists to undercut any progress that might be made.
Walking out of the DNC on Thursday night after Kamala Harris gave her speech, I had to walk through a whole bunch of protesters, as did many people. But with a lot,
what were they protesting?
I get some of them that are anti-abortion, so of course they're here making a case that like they're killing the babies or whatever it is they say. I wasn't listening.
Yeah.
One of the interesting conversations that was happening this week is from Palestinians and allies who were saying, give us some space on stage. They did not receive it. Horrible self-own by Democrats. but also making the case, like, there was an argument, why aren't you protesting at Republican convention? Because they're not giving you space either, and you don't seem to go to their spaces.
Yeah.
And their argument is, we know they're garbage.
Right.
We expect you to, if you talk, to do better. So that's why we're here, which I think is a fair argument.
I think that's a completely fair argument. What I don't think is a fair argument is like somebody being like, oh, it's so gross how people are like obsessed with Tim Walz. Like, can you let us fucking be happy that we have a cool candidate that everybody seems to like? It seems like anytime anybody gets excited, it's just these like white dude neckbeards who are just like,
I got this a lot online where if anything good is happening or the vibes are good and you're enjoying yourself, they will tell you, well, Kamala Harris is bad for these reasons. It's like, I'm not looking to her to fix everything, but given the options, given pragmatism, it's fine.
It's
good. It's nice to think, oh, we might actually change history with her pick.
Yeah.
And if you give Democrats enough seats in the Senate,
you can start doing real things.
You could do some shit.
Yeah. Oh boy, I don't know, man. It's so exhausting and it's so difficult. And
only 70 some more days. Oh, let me talk about, this is a story I wanted to get to last week. I did not get to, but I didn't want to skip it either. There is a prophet, self-described prophet. His name is Jeremiah Johnson.
All prophets are self-described.
That is fair. Yeah, his name is Jeremiah Johnson, and he's the sort of guy who spent years spreading misinformation using Christian language. And then he kind of pivoted to politics when he realized there was an audience that was looking for that stuff. So, for example, during COVID, he said, I had a dream where like Dr. Anthony Fauci is a big rat sent by Satan to thwart Donald Trump.
Did he just see one of those anti-union blow-up rats and then took a nap and was like,
and then
God is speaking to me.
He said COVID was a, quote, demonic attack against baby boomers to stop Trump's reelection.
I wish it was a demonic attack against baby boomers.
I mean, they deserve.
They deserve it.
His most famous prophecy, though, no matter what the polls were saying, was that Trump would be reelected in 2020. And he explained this over and over. For example, he said, God told me in a dream that the Dodgers would win the World Series, Amy Coney Barrett's going to get on the Supreme Court before the election, and Trump is going to get back into office. All that came summer of 2020. And the Dodgers did win the World Series, so the fact that he said that would happen, I mean, they were good. That's not a big shocker. The fact that Coney Barrett was going to get seated also
was sort of a foregone conclusion.
Kind of a foregone conclusion. But Trump, the election had not happened yet. So he's like, I got the first two big ones right, so I'm going to get number 3 right. And of course, that didn't happen. So that's when Jeremiah Johnson took a very weird turn.
Okay.
Because instead of doing, what do you think he would do?
I truly am not going to try to get into this man's head.
My guess would have been he just says, well, the election was stolen. I was right.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Instead of doing that, he actually admitted he got it wrong. On Facebook.
Excuse you?
Yeah.
These people never admit when they're wrong.
2 months after the election, he posted on Facebook. It's now deleted, but he did post this at the time. He said,
"Oh, that's good. Gold cannot stay," or whatever.
Said, my aim in this public apology is twofold. First, I would like to repent for inaccurately prophesying that Donald Trump would win a second term, blah, blah, blah. Nor will I proclaim Donald Trump actually won, so I was right, but now it has been stolen from him.
Okay. ...
I want to go on the record. I was wrong. I am deeply sorry, and I ask for your forgiveness. ... As a human being, I missed what God was saying.
Okay.
And then he actually...
What lessons are we going to learn from this?
He added one more thing where he's like, how did you screw up? He said, God himself anointed Donald Trump in 2016 and then removed him from office in 2020 because of his own pride and arrogance. So Biden becoming the next president is meant to humble not only Donald Trump, but all those who worshipped him more than they kept their focus on Jesus Christ. So Jeremiah Johnson posted this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. He also made some videos that are still up, by the way, titled, I Was Wrong. And he tries to dissect how did he fuck this up? Like, it was very interesting for a
Who's
bit.
the guy who would always predict the end of the world over and over? Harold
Camping.
Harold Camping. This feels like, I mean, it's the opposite of that, right? Of like
he's not doubling down that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
He's saying, yep, I got it wrong. So interesting.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
mind you, he never said the actual truth, which is that he's not a prophet. He has no special powers. God never spoke to him. He was lying when he pretended otherwise. He didn't say any of that. But what do you think his Christian base did after he issued that apology?
oh, they fucking slammed him out of there.
Yes.
Absolutely not. We don't like apologies in this world.
It happened so quickly that they turned on this guy.
For admitting that he was not for admitting he was wrong. It's for saying that God removed Trump because of his pride. I guarantee you that's it.
Basically apologizing for it. And then within weeks, he announced that he was suspending his ministry activity and would announce new plans very soon. Those new plans are, I'm quitting ministry for good. Like, it destroyed him, that prediction. He said, we are officially terminating Jeremiah Johnson Ministries. All of our social media accounts will be deleted over the next week, ... I feel God is launching me, my family, and our ministry team further into his purpose for us. For many years, I offered prophetic commentary on various political and world events. But now I am shifting my attention to the preparation of the bride for the return of the bridegroom, which is weird Christian language for God's
Jesus
coming back.
back to...
So he launched a new...
Wait, prepping the bride? He's prepping Earth?
No one knows. He started a new ministry that was not about prophesying stuff. It's just talks about demons and gibberish and shit. But whatever. Honestly, I haven't heard from this guy in years because he's not relevant, because he's not making political predictions anymore, right? He's just talking about Jesus bullshit. So, hadn't thought about him for years. I forgot he made that wrong prediction.
Yeah.
The reason he's in the news is because a Washington Post reporter recently published a really incredible story about his family, because it turns out Jeremiah Johnson has an older brother, Josiah Johnson, who's also Christian and also ran a ministry, but he's so deeply troubled by what his brother's doing, and so troubled, in fact, he posted on Facebook
Still active? The older brother is posting about...
Older brother Josiah is posting about Jeremiah, saying he completely and totally fabricating his dreams, visions, and prophetic words. Basically, all that he's all talk. He's not actually thinking about this stuff.
Okay.
Which is very interesting. So he said that, but it didn't really get into, wait, does that mean Jeremiah was making up that God spoke to him and lying about it? Or... like,
was he misinterpreting his dreams?
Which is what Jeremiah's excuse was. I misinterpreted it. Maybe I got it wrong in that sense.
And none of them at any point allow for the fact that they just had a dream.
Nope, not an option. Everything's
what if they have the dream where it's like, oh, it's finals week and I haven't been to class all semester and I can't find my room? Like, are they saying like,
God's sending you a message.
God's telling me I need to study chemistry again or whatever?
But this story is fascinating because the brothers went into ministry together. But Jeremiah, the two brothers went their separate ways because Jeremiah, the prophet, he invited their father to council members of their church. And Josiah was like, you invited dad to counsel people? Because dad physically abused him, at least.
What?
Like, he's not a good dude.
This is a twist?
Yeah. And he only returned to Jeremiah's ministry. He left the ministry after that. He left the church. Josiah did.
Wow.
But he returned to Jeremiah's ministry in 2018, mostly because he was broke and needed money. He's like, brother, can you give me a job?
For the best of us.
It happens. But then he noticed a different problem, which is that Jeremiah wasn't just making bad decisions. He was plagiarizing from other people's sermons. For example, like...
oh, no.
Josiah must have sent him like a poem or something. And then Jeremiah starts saying, God spoke to me, and I have something to tell this church. And it was the poem. He was passing it off as prophecy.
Oh, no.
And when Josiah confronted his brother, Jeremiah said, and the screenshots were shared with the Washington Post, Josiah, I have been as gracious to you as I can. I got you your job. Don't forget that. You shouldn't be offended. You should feel tremendously blessed.
Oh boy.
And then
I cannot wait for this reality show to come out.
Jeremiah then plagiarized a post about Ruth Bader Ginsburg from another pastor.
No.
Trashing her or something, but he stole it
Obviously.
from another pastor.
So this is always Jeremiah doing the
Jeremiah's doing all the
stealing.
bad shit.
Okay.
Yes. And then these brothers grow apart.
So their names are so aggressively biblical.
Yes.
It's kind of painful. Go ahead.
The brothers grew further apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Jeremiah returned to ministry following his Trump prediction gone wrong, they started growing further apart even then.
Aw.
To the point where a different brother, they have another brother.
Of course they do. Is
posted
his name Josiah?
Probably. Posted a lengthy rant
Ooh.
about
He plagiarized.
about Josiah, saying like, this dude, he's trying to break us apart. He's the bad one in this family. Here's what it says in the long post from the third brother.
I mean, brother against...
Josiah, along with his wife, have deceived and divided many innocent and unsuspecting people and families by their flattering speech and cunning behavior. Full of envy and malice, Josiah has appointed himself as the chief prosecutor of the church. Although he's never been stable or consistent enough to lead any legitimate church or ministry for more than a few months, he boldly lectures others on what a healthy ministry should look like. So just brother on brother fighting.
Wow.
Over all
this
this.
is some Cain and Abel shit, huh?
Yeah. In some ways, it's like a
They're
family
brothers, right?
spat. They are.
Okay.
But it's also a battle between like one Christian minister or ministry and like another one that's more popular and influential. And they all think they know how Christ should be represented.
The
And
correct way.
everyone has to pick a side. So, article was fascinating. It's bizarre because Josiah honestly seems more disturbed by the plagiarism than any of the harmful rhetoric. Like,
Well, because they're all saying the same message, right?
like Josiah thinks his brother is a false prophet, but also he doesn't admit that that's true of all prophets. They're all false. Like he thinks, no, of course.
Like, how can you tell if somebody's a real prophet or, I guess, if they get their predictions wrong?
Right. Like, yeah, maybe some people God speaks to, just not my brother.
I wonder what this Josiah would rather. Maybe he just doesn't want him to make predictions. Because, like if he makes a prediction and he was wrong, what would Josiah have him do? Just pretend it never. Probably just pretend it never happened, right?
Maybe. And even if he thinks his brother is lying, guess what? Josiah's like a Trump voter for the past 2 elections.
Right.
So he's plenty delusional himself.
Yeah, there are no good guys here. This is a very let them fight situation for me. I like it.
I know. Part of me doesn't want to let him fight. On Facebook recently, after the Washington Post article came out, Josiah posted another, basically saying, hey, this article is out about my family. And what he said in there is interesting. He urged everyone to read it. He said, quote, my family and I have paid a genuinely high price for refusing to go quietly into the night. And our hope is that people will see how delusional my brothers Jeremiah and Paul, that's the other brother, also a biblical name,
Also biblical.
as well as my dad. These men who appear to be sincere on every front have wounded, maimed, manipulated, and lied to the masses in the name of Jesus and have used his name to make themselves famous, wealthy, and well-liked. ... This article is the beginning of what we pray will be the exposure that humbles them and teaches them to tell truth.
Wow. This family's going to have a rough Christmas.
Part of me is sympathetic a little bit to Josiah. Like, you're putting yourself in the limelight. You're speaking to a reporter about your family drama.
Yeah.
And that can't be easy.
No.
And you're speaking out about your faith, which, again, he's a Christian still. That can't be easy. So kudos to him for that. I don't think he deserves to be harassed, which he's totally getting online from Christian
Yeah.
cultists.
I think we should, really lift people up when they admit that they're wrong, because that's not a thing a lot of people can do for some reason.
Kudos to him for saying something.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's never easy.
Wow.
Right?
What a fucked up family.
Right? Good times. I had one final story. This one's relatively short, but it made me laugh. Because it involves a Florida man who really wants every public school classroom to start the day with a prayer. And here's the thing. This guy's name is Hillel Hellinger. He lives in Florida, in Miami.
Hillel Hellinger?
Yeah, I think he's Orthodox Jewish.
Okay.
And he wants to pass an amendment to the Constitution that would require teachers to lead kids in non-denominational prayer every morning. That's how he gets away with saying, this is legal. You can have a non-denominational prayer, he says. Because he says in the state law, the text of the prayer, he actually offered it. You can't say whatever you want. They have to say, Almighty God, who is aware of his creation, who keeps it going and judges it, please have mercy on us.
That's not even well written.
It's very much not well written. And he says each school district shall require that every school day begin with each teacher grades K through 12 leading their students in this prayer.
I wish I had so little in my life to worry about.
And then he says, if you want an exemption to saying the prayer, well, of course, that's legal, but you have to put it in writing to the school principal. So that's his idea. He wants this to be on the Constitution.
Who is this guy? Is he a
Rando.
Elected representative?
Nope,
just
Rando,
a dude.
Just a dude. He wants this on the ballot in a couple of years, so he's getting the ball rolling. And here's the kicker. He wants to do all of this in South Dakota.
I thought he said Florida.
He lives in Florida. He wants to do this in South Dakota. What's his connection to South Dakota?
I don't know.
He has none. He just woke up and said, let's do this in South Dakota.
What?
Why South Dakota?
Why South Dakota?
A reporter asked him that. And he said, if I were to admit it in Florida, if I wanted this in Florida, I could do the exact same thing, but I would need more than 50 times as many people to sign the petition to get it on the ballot.
It's just because it's a small population?
Yep.
It's not even the smallest population in the country.
Yep. He says, I mean, South Dakota may be a very crime-free state, but most of the country is going through a lot of crime.
Sir,
that's his excuse for why they need prayer in school. But basically, South Dakota, to get this on the ballot, you would need about 17,000 signatures.
I mean, North Dakota's right there, dog. Like, they definitely have fewer people.
It might just be the state law that allows these ballot initiatives to get on the ballot.
Even if you're not a resident of that
Even if you're not a resident.
state.
So here's where it gets interesting. There is a process for getting something on the ballot, obviously. That process involves writing a letter to the Attorney General of the state, basically saying, this is what I want on the ballot. And then, just so I'm clear on this, he has to submit it to the Attorney General. Attorney General of South Dakota. The Attorney General has to take it seriously and then explain in plain English, basically, here's what the proposed measure would be. Now, I'm not taking a side on it. But here's what, because, you know, people might submit a thing.
Yeah.
His job is to literally put it in
kind of
plain
translate.
English. Let me translate what this guy is saying. And then he has to then say, are there any legal issues we might have to think about?
Is this legally enforceable kind of deal? Okay.
And then he has to submit it to another administration official, get it back, and then he could give it back to Hillel and say, all right, it's all approved, but now if you want this on the ballot, you need X amount of signatures. Okay. That's what he said. And the Attorney General has responded now. And he says, all right, you need 17,509 signatures.
So wait, I could just write up a bill?
Anyone can write up a thing. And submit it. And the Attorney General basically said, there was really not much to translate.
Yeah.
It was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You want everyone in grades K through 12 to say the following. It allows people to get an exemption if they provide in writing. Okay, he says all that. He says the last sentence here. The measure may be challenged in court on constitutional grounds.
Yeah, that first one you're going to trip right over.
Judicial or legislative clarification of the measure may be necessary. But that's all he wrote. And basically the Attorney General saying, I'm the messenger.
Yeah.
Don't be mad at me.
Yeah.
My job is to translate and tell you, yeah, this could be problematic. And now I have nothing to do. I'm not taking a position because this is not the time for me to take a position or anything.
Yeah.
And he's right about that.
Yeah.
He's a hardcore Republican, but he's doing his job.
Yeah.
So now it's back in this dude's court. It's now his job to get all the signatures he needs.
And how many thousand?
17,000 plus.
Oh, boy.
South Dakota has I think, couple million people. Maybe? No, it can't be that much.
I think it's probably a couple
You look up the
million.
population.
Okay.
But my favorite part about the story is a reporter asked this guy, why do you think this is legal? There's no way this is legal, right? And he responds, he's like, well, I spoke to my lawyer friend and he told me it would be fine. And then he actually kept talking. What is it?
910,000.
900, that sounds more like it. 910,000, you need 17,000 plus signatures.
Wyoming had a million. Wyoming has 581. Yikes.
here's his answer about the lawyer.
Tell me.
I emailed Alan Dershowitz regarding this issue. And he says that with the present...
Dershowitz?
Jeffrey Epstein's buddy, Alan Dershowitz.
Sir, what?
The guy who's like, Trump has done nothing wrong.
Alan Dershowitz,
Yeah.
of all people.
Yeah.
Why did he contact Alan Dershowitz?
They're like BFF.
Oh.
I emailed Alan Dershowitz regarding this issue, and he says that with the present Supreme Court, it's very likely they would overturn the 1962 ruling and allow for non-denominational prayer in public schools. And if Alan Dershowitz says something, you can take it to the bank.
Oh, I mean...
So part of that, I see that, and I'm like, I know the Supreme
Alan
Court is screwed up,
Dershowitz.
and if they could overturn established precedent about church-state separation, they totally would. But also...
That First Amendment keeps getting in the way.
But
Like,
also
Alan Dershowitz, if you don't know who Alan Dershowitz is, he defended O.J., he defended Epstein, obviously. I believe Trump, I think.
He is definitely
He is not on the side of the
allied.
angels.
He appears on Fox over
Julian
and over.
Assange.
And Newsmax.
Oh, Harvey Weinstein.
Of course.
Just all the
Best people. And so here's the thing. It may be so illegal what this guy is trying to do that even this Supreme Court might say no to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that even that part of the argument makes that much sense. But I was looking up this guy because I'm like, who the hell is this dude just submitting this ballot measure?
I just went down an Alan Dershowitz rabbit hole for a second. I just can't believe that he's made an appearance here. Go
This
ahead.
dude,
I'm sorry.
I found him in 2 old newspaper articles. In the year 2000, he sued a pharmacy. This guy's a pharmacist. He sued a pharmacy that wouldn't hire him because he said, I'm not going to sell condoms. Why? Religion. And then he sued the pharmacy that said, if you're not going to sell condoms, we can't hire you. He's like, okay, I'm suing you. That was in 2000.
And how did that go?
He lost that case.
What?
I know,
Why?
shocking. He couldn't do the job. And then in 2009, he ran for North Miami Beach City Council, and that campaign kind of fizzled out because there were these candidate forums, and he was a no-show. And his excuse was, well, I can't meet on the Sabbath, which is on the weekends when everyone is free to do a forum.
Saturdays.
But like,
yeah.
Then he ran again in 2013, and he was asked in a forum that he did show up to, hey, what can you do to expand tech opportunities for public school students? He responded by saying, all 10 of my kids are in private school. I don't know what they do in public schools. And then he lost again.
All 10 of his children are in prayer. How much money does this man have?
I don't know. He's a pharmacist with Alan Dershowitz friend money.
Yeah, if he's got connections to Dershowitz,
Right.
he's definitely gotten
And
something
now
shady.
he thinks he has the right to tell public schools in another state how they should waste their time.
This is one of the
by
wildest things
acknowledging
I've ever
God.
heard in my entire life, Hammond.
know, it's great.
It's so nonsensical, but it's weird
It
that
makes sense for Florida, man.
it does. It does track with Florida, man. It sure does. Also, it's just funny to me sometimes when politicians are like, I don't know, we have to take this shit seriously. And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't give a shit if everybody dies as long as I win this election. Like,
Right.
Which is it, bud? Are we like all your special constituents and we get to talk to you personally? Or do you not give a shit about me?
Are you friends with Alan? If you're not, you don't get a say in
Alan
this.
fucking Dershowitz. Who played Alan Dershowitz in that O.J. Simpson
You
thing?
figure that out, and
Okay.
we'll talk about it in bonus. What else are we talking about in bonus?
I would love to talk to you about what we're talking about in bonus. First of all, on the Discord, somebody made a bingo card for this podcast.
Oh my God.
A lot of them are just when we interrupt each other or the dog interrupts us both.
right.
I want to talk to you. Last Thursday, I had a wonderful, fun 90-minute kind of interview kind of thing with two historians, Kelly Carter Jackson and Nicole Hemmer, and we had such a blast. We talked about dumb history things. It was so fun. I also want to talk about I've been watching Ghosts, both the UK and the US version. Love to talk about that.
Okay.
And I started a show on Apple TV called Lady in the Lake, which I am loving.
All right, we'll talk about that soon, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.